but be a good person, spread the gospel, give people something to believe in, and just show that if you give your best, it's good enough. You know, I feel like people in life are so hard on themselves. You give your best and you come up short, and people just want to give up all the time. It's like, give your best. Don't worry about what outsiders who have not worked for nothing have to say, and focus on delivering your best. And that's all I've ever done is give.
Y'all, this wasn't supposed to go like this. What started as a power move, a public flex meant to prove everything was perfect, just turned into one of the most uncomfortable, eye-opening moments people have seen in a long time. Because the second she opened her mouth, everything shifted. This wasn't just an interview anymore. This was exposure. When Claressa Shields sat down and started talking about Papoose, the money, the lifestyle, who pays for what, it didn't sound like love anymore. It sounded like a breakdown waiting to happen. And the moment that $10,000 story slipped out, that's when everything cracked. You could almost feel it. The energy changed. The questions got louder. And suddenly, the image they were trying so hard to sell didn't match what people were actually seeing. Because here's the problem. You can't claim someone handles everything and then reveal they got visibly upset over missing out on $10,000, not on a private call, not behind closed doors, but live, on air, in front of everyone. That's not just messy. That's a contradiction. And in today's world, contradictions don't stay hidden. They go viral. But it didn't stop there. Because once people started looking closer, they didn't just hear the words. They saw the distance. They felt the tension. They noticed the silence between moments. And what they found wasn't a fairy tale. It was something way more complicated, way more uncomfortable.
Good person, spread the gospel, give people something to believe in, and just show that if you give your best, it's good enough. You know, I feel like people in life are so hard on themselves. You give your best and you come up short, and people just want to give up all the time. It's like, give your best. Don't worry about what outsiders who have not worked for nothing have to say, and focus on delivering your best. And that's all I've ever done is give my best. And I have been okay with it. I gave my best in MMA and I lost the fight.
What people thought was a simple relationship reveal has now turned into a slow, public unraveling. And the deeper you look into it, the harder it becomes to ignore what's really happening beneath the surface. Because this was never just about love. This was about image. From the very beginning, Claressa Shields didn't just introduce a relationship. She presented a narrative. A polished, confident, almost untouchable version of events where everything looked controlled, successful, and perfectly aligned. But narratives like that? They don't crack all at once. They crack in moments. And the first real crack showed up the second she sat down at the Breakfast Club. At first, it felt like any other interview, calm, confident, even calculated. But then the conversation shifted. The details started slipping out. Not small details, not harmless ones. Financial details. Who pays for what? Who covers the lifestyle? Who's responsible for everything behind the scenes? And just like that, the tone changed. Because once money enters the conversation publicly, especially in a relationship already under scrutiny, it stops sounding like admiration and starts sounding like justification. And that's exactly what people picked up on. Then came the moment that changed everything. The $10,000 story. It sounded casual at first, almost playful. A simple game. 2 options. A random choice. But the outcome? That's where things got uncomfortable. Because according to her, Papoose chose $1.
I lost the fight in MMA, but I gave my best. And the only way I was able to live with that fight and that loss is because I know I gave my best in training camp. I gave my best in the fight. I had 8 stitches taken out my head 3 days before the fight. But hey, I gave my best. And if you give your best, and that's to anybody in here, if you give your best, whether you come up short or not, it's okay. Do it again, and maybe you'll come out on top the next time, but just don't quit giving your best.
And in that exact moment, the entire narrative began to fall apart. Because the same man being described as someone who handles everything suddenly reacted in a way that didn't match that image at all. That wasn't just a small inconsistency. That was a visible contradiction. And once the audience caught that, there was no going back. The questions didn't just start. They multiplied. If he's really covering everything, why react like that? If the relationship is truly solid, why does the story feel so forced? And more importantly, why does it sound like something is being proven instead of something being lived? But instead of stepping back, instead of letting things settle, she leaned in. More interviews, more explanations, more emphasis on how good everything is. And that's when another layer of tension surfaced. Because every time Layla Ali was mentioned, the tone shifted again. It wasn't neutral. It wasn't casual. It felt personal. Almost like an unresolved conflict that kept finding its way back into the conversation, whether it belonged there or not. And people noticed that too. Because when someone keeps repeating a name, it usually means something deeper hasn't been resolved. But even that wasn't the most complicated part. The real issue was already sitting in plain sight. Because while this entire relationship was being pushed into the spotlight, there was one detail that refused to disappear. Papoose was still legally tied to Remy Ma. Separated, maybe, but not divorced. And that distinction? It changed everything. Because no matter how the story was framed, no matter how confidently it was presented, that legal reality stayed the same. And the longer it remained unresolved, the louder the questions became. 2 years, and still no closure? No finality? No clear transition? That's not just a delay. That's a situation. And situations like that don't stay quiet for long. They build, they stack, they wait. Until one moment, one detail, one slip, brings everything to the surface. And by this point, that process had already begun. By the time they walked out of that interview, the damage had already been done. But what people didn't expect was how much more would be revealed without a single word being said. Because sometimes, silence exposes more than statements ever could. As Papoose and Claressa Shields stepped outside, cameras were still rolling. Phones were still up. Eyes were still watching. And what they saw didn't match the story. No smiles. No natural chemistry. No subtle gestures that usually exist between two people who are supposedly solid. Instead, there was distance. Physical distance. He walked ahead, not slightly, but noticeably. A few steps that felt intentional. Controlled. Almost like space was needed, not just physically, but emotionally. She followed behind. Careful steps. Slower pace. A glance or two in his direction, but no real response coming back. That wasn't just awkward. That was telling. Because body language doesn't lie. It doesn't perform. It doesn't rehearse. It reveals. And what it revealed in that moment was a disconnect that no interview could cover up. That clip didn't just circulate. It exploded. People replayed it. Analyzed it. Zoomed in on the space between them like it meant something, because it did. And just when the conversation couldn't get any louder, another twist hit. 2 days later. Same city. Same energy. But a completely different presence. Remy Ma appeared at Cardi B's sold-out concert in New York. Front and center. Posting. Smiling. Showing love. And almost immediately, another post surfaced. From the same event. From the same night. From Papoose. That's when everything shifted, again. Because now it wasn't just about what was said in an interview. It was about timing, presence, connection, and the possibility that something behind the scenes wasn't aligning with what was being presented publicly. The internet didn't hesitate. Comments flooded in. One line echoed louder than the rest. This isn't giving divorce. And just like that, the narrative cracked even further. Because no matter how it was explained, repost, coincidence, timing, it didn't feel accidental. It felt layered, calculated, or at the very least, complicated enough to raise eyebrows. And once people start connecting dots, they don't stop. Behind the scenes, according to reports, Claressa Shields tried to regain control of the narrative. Messages, replies, clarifications, explanations that were meant to quiet things down. But instead, they did the opposite. Because the more she spoke, the more it sounded like she was trying to fix something that had already been exposed. And that's where the pattern became impossible to ignore. Every time the relationship was pushed into the spotlight, something followed. A reaction, a contradiction, a moment that didn't quite fit. And then, an explanation. Over and over again. The same cycle. Show, react, explain, repeat. But here's the problem with cycles like that. They don't stabilize a story. They weaken it. Because consistency doesn't need defense. It shows itself. And by now, this situation wasn't showing consistency. By now, it wasn't just a story anymore. It was a pattern people couldn't unsee. Every clip, every post, every reaction, it all started connecting in a way that felt less like coincidence and more like something quietly falling apart in real time. Because when you step back and look at everything together, the interview, the money talk, the $10,000 reaction, the body language, the concert timing, the explanations, it doesn't feel random. It feels like pieces of a bigger picture that don't quite fit, no matter how many times they're rearranged. And that's where things start to shift from confusion to concern. Because now the focus isn't just on what's being said. It's on what's not being said, on what's being avoided, on what keeps slipping through, no matter how controlled the narrative tries to be. Take the way Claressa Shields keeps emphasizing the same points. He does this. He pays for that. He's not like that. Over and over again. At some point, it stops sounding like reassurance and starts sounding like insistence. And when someone has to insist that hard, people start asking why. Because real stability doesn't need repetition. It shows itself, naturally, without force. But here, nothing feels natural anymore. Everything feels staged, measured. Almost like every word is trying to hold something together that's already slipping. And then there's Papoose. Because his silence says more than any statement ever could. He's not correcting. He's not reinforcing. He's not stepping in to align the narrative. Instead, he's pulling back, creating space, letting the situation unfold without fully standing in it. And that kind of silence? It doesn't calm things down. It amplifies them. Because when one person is speaking louder and louder, and the other is saying less and less, it creates an imbalance that people can feel, even through a screen. And that imbalance is exactly what's making this situation harder to defend. Then there's the timing of everything involving Remy Ma. Because no matter how it's framed, no matter how it's explained, her presence still lingers over the entire situation. Not directly, not loudly, but consistently enough to keep the question alive. Has anything actually ended? Or is everything just being rebranded in real time? Because separated can be explained, but it can't be rewritten. And the longer that legal and emotional line stays unresolved, the more complicated everything around it becomes. Especially when it's being pushed into the public eye this heavily. At this point, it's no longer about who said what, or who posted what. It's about alignment. And right now, nothing feels aligned. The words don't match the reactions. The image doesn't match the energy. The story doesn't match the details. And when that kind of disconnect keeps repeating, it stops looking like a misunderstanding and starts looking like a slow exposure. Because that's the part no one can control. Not interviews, not captions, not explanations. The more you try to manage how something looks, the more obvious it becomes when it doesn't feel real. And that's exactly where this situation is sitting right now. Right in that uncomfortable space between what's being presented and what people are actually seeing. A space where every new moment doesn't clarify anything. It complicates it. And the longer it stays in that space, the harder it becomes to bring it back together. Because public attention doesn't fade when things are unclear. It locks in. It watches closer. It questions deeper. Until eventually, there's nothing left to explain. Only things left to reveal. And if this pattern continues the way it has been, then this isn't just a moment. This is a buildup. One that doesn't end quietly. One that doesn't resolve easily. One that, piece by piece, turns perception into conclusion. And once that happens, there's no controlling the narrative anymore. There's only reacting to it. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. This doesn't look like it's slowing down. It looks like it's building. Because every time a new detail comes out, it doesn't fix the story, it fractures it even more. Every explanation adds another layer. Every appearance raises another question. And at this point, people aren't waiting for clarity anymore. They're waiting for the moment everything finally collapses. Because that's where this is heading if nothing changes. You can't keep pushing a perfect image while the cracks are this visible. You can't keep repeating the same narrative when the reactions don't match it. And you definitely can't control how people interpret what they're clearly seeing unfold in real time. This isn't just gossip anymore. This is perception turning into belief. And belief? That's what sticks. Right now, people aren't asking if something is off. They're asking how long it's been off. They're replaying moments, reanalyzing clips, connecting dots that were never meant to be connected publicly. And once the audience reaches that point, there's no resetting the narrative. There's only escalation. Because the truth doesn't always come out in one big reveal. Sometimes, it leaks out slowly, through reactions, through silence, through the moments nobody thought would matter. Until